Hello everyone, welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Addison Smith. Why is it that those who have the least seem to be the happiest so often in the world? This is a pattern throughout the globe. If you talk to anyone who's been around, you'll always hear that despite the millions and millions of people who live in tents in places like Africa, for example, or in huts and are malnourished, they're still some of the happiest people that you will ever meet. Why is that? Well, certainly there are many reasons, but you can't help but notice these happy people have cohesive societies, communities, shared values, respect for tradition and their heritage. You can try to deny that this has any impact on their happiness, but you cannot argue that they would be better off if their communities had nothing in common, no shared values or culture. And then you look at America, the wealthiest, most free and prosperous nation in the world ever. By every single metric, America has been the country of all countries, envied by all around the world. And yet today we find ourselves increasingly discontent, depressed, angry, divided more than ever. Why? What do we do about it? Well, you could very easily make the case that as our heroes have evolved, what and who Gen Z and millennials are being taught to look up to, as has our country's national identity collapsed alongside it. When generations past were brought up in school, they were taught to revere and respect America. Today, kids are taught the opposite. They're required to hate their country. They're told that the new value we must share is some fake diversity. Everyone has to be different for us to be united somehow. And the role models of America today are what? Hollywood celebrities whose lives are a living, miserable, hell-bound disaster? Drag queens, sexual perverts? It's no wonder we find ourselves divided as a country when those are our new heroes. We can't even agree on fundamental values like we used to, fundamental truth for that matter. What a woman is, that it's bad to kill babies, that it's bad to teach children they can switch genders and mutilate their bodies. In fact, it's gotten to such a rotten point that conservatives are now cheering on transvestite men who accept transgenderism, pronouns, and all the like, but draw the line at non-binary. No. That's a bridge too far.
I'm not into all the other I think.
What other
The they and them.
Yeah.
And all that extra that we added during the pandemic because everyone was so bored on their houses. They just started to make up more and
more stuff?
Yeah. How are you a they? What the does that mean? It's stupid is what it is.
Yeah.
But you need someone like me that looks like me to say it.
Our culture is so degraded that conservatives have resorted to cheering that on as a stand against lunacy. It's for reasons like this, like all of this madness, that talks of a national divorce are gaining some serious momentum. Most recently, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted this out, quote, "We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government." Everyone I talk to says this, from the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies. This message resonates with a lot of people. This tweet alone has more than 77,000 likes. Countless Americans sympathize with this sentiment. I sympathize with this sentiment. But of course, this has been met with criticism. Squishy America Last Republicans like Utah Governor Spencer Cox threw fodder to the liberal mob, writing, quote, "This rhetoric is destructive and wrong and evil. Evil. We don't need a divorce, we need marriage counseling. We can disagree without hate. Healthy conflict was critical to our nation's founding and survival." Yeah, except the conflicts and disagreements from our nation's founding weren't so severe as should we murder an entire generation of babies and castrate them if we let them live. I already checked and the Republican governor doesn't bother to call any of that evil on his Twitter. He's too busy trying to own Marjorie Taylor Greene. Liz Cheney, another rhino, chimed in too, saying, quote, "Secession is unconstitutional. No member of Congress should advocate secession, Marjorie." This is part of the reason that we've arrived at this point to begin with in our nation, where calls for a national divorce are even happening. Bad Republican actors spend no time speaking on the issues that matter, and all of the time giving a tongue lashing to the actual Republicans, conservatives who do. Has Liz Cheney ever stopped and thought about that? I doubt it. She's been too busy enabling the downfall of our culture, our country, facilitating it even. We can't dismiss talking about national divorce anymore. We've long surpassed the time where that was appropriate to avoid it. The question is simple. Is there a legitimate path forward to restoring a national identity? Is it reasonable to assume America will make a comeback? Shut down abortion clinics and gender mutilation centers, prosecute all involved with operating those horror mills, put God back in our schools, teach Americans to love their country, as every country in the world teaches its citizens to do with their country and their values. Is it reasonable to assume we can obtain that vision again? I don't know. But it is more than reasonable to be skeptical that we can't. All the more reason to stay alert. Meanwhile, speaking of bad actors, I want to spotlight some corruption happening in the state of Illinois right now. No one is talking about this, even though what happens in that state in coming weeks and months could shape the future of your Second Amendment in the rest of the country. Last month, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed an assault weapons ban. It didn't take long for lawsuits to start rolling in. Illinois AG candidate Thomas DeVore is leading the charge in this lawsuit. He represents hundreds of plaintiffs and has secured a temporary restraining order on the ban after a judge ruled in his favor. That was a massive legal win. We were very happy to see it. I covered it on the show. However, there's an unfortunate update, a disturbing update to this case. Some bad actors in the Republican Party there who are evidently sabotaging DeVore's lawsuit effectively. State Representative Dan Calkins decided to file a suit of his own, which seemed fine at first. The more pressure, the merrier. But it's starting to appear that Calkins is not in this for the people of Illinois or protecting the Constitution, but rather for his own personal gain. According to inside sources that I have directly spoken with, and according to court filings from people who signed on to Calkins' lawsuit, they got duped out of money from him. Calkins allegedly encouraged each of the 900 plaintiffs in his suit to donate $200 to his legal defense fund, he called it. But it turns out he apparently submitted the money that he collected from that to his campaign account. If this is true, it's extremely corrupt. And now that people are on to him, catching him with his hand in the cookie jar, it seems like he has struck some sort of deal to avoid legal trouble. We don't know how else to explain what I'm about to show you. Thomas DeVore, again, the man trying to save the Second Amendment in Illinois, filed a procedural motion with the Illinois Supreme Court to consolidate all of their cases and the Macon County case that Calkins has filed. This effectively means bringing them under one umbrella and allowing for discovery to obtain facts and testimony and more evidence from other parties to build a stronger case together. Calkins has responded by fighting against this motion, writing, quote, "Defendants' respondents filed their response to motion and consolidate cases under Illinois Supreme Court rule. Calkins does not consider discovery material to the disposition of issues and posits that encumbering its litigation with unnecessary discovery is contrary to efficiency and convenience. Wherefore, Calkins' plaintiffs, respondents, respectively request this court deny the motion." We don't know why he would do this. We can only speculate, but it appears that he's trying to sabotage the case against Pritzker. How else do you explain it? Scott Kaspar is an attorney and publisher of the Illinois Review. He's a plaintiff in the DeVore lawsuit and joins me right now to discuss this. Scott, it's great to have you on the program. What is happening here? If this is about saving the Second Amendment in Illinois, what Calkins is doing seems to be running contrary to that now.
Well, Addison, it sure does. And let me just say, greetings from the People's Republic of Chicago, where we have some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country, if not the most restrictive gun laws in the country. And this case is really interesting because, Representative Calkins could have just let the cases. He now has a restraining order in his case. His association of gun owners, the 900 plaintiffs that you mentioned are potential plaintiffs. It's a little unclear what they are, given that the association is unincorporated. But they have the effect of a temporary restraining order. Tom DeVore's cases he has 3 cases, a total of 4,700 plaintiffs who all have a restraining order. So what's the hurry to run to the Supreme Court? It's not really clear, unless perhaps he's made a deal with the governor.
Yeah, it just reeks of corruption through and through. Keep in mind, Calkins is on the Illinois Freedom Caucus. Scott, he started out, it seemed, with good intentions. No one had reason to believe that someone on the Illinois Freedom Caucus would be sabotaging a lawsuit to restore the Second Amendment in Illinois. What are people catching on to him? Are people is he able to evade scrutiny so far, or has he been able to coax people into this what seems to be just a stunt to raise money for his campaign?
It does seem to be that, a stunt. And when he first filed his lawsuit, he filed it on behalf of himself as the only named individual plaintiff, and then he has an association that he named, this unincorporated association of gun owners. And it's a little unclear if he did it if procedurally it's correct. In fact, I was a little surprised that the governor did not move to dismiss that association. But nonetheless, the judge entered a temporary restraining order that covers, at least the order says, that association. And for some period of time, he perhaps had put out the imminent fire of what could have happened with his constituents, his plaintiffs who donated the $200 each, making some noise for him. But now he's taken this whole thing quickly to the Supreme Court on the issue that Tom DeVore first raised, which the issue is that the assault weapons ban that the governor pushed through violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Illinois Constitution because it has these arbitrary exceptions in it. There's exceptions for instance, mall cops. They can go out and buy an AR-15. Who's not exempt from it? Retired military. So a retired member of SEAL Team 6 can't get an AR-15, but the mall cop can. It makes no sense. And so the temporary restraining order covered all of these parties, and you would think that it would be politically expedient to do nothing, actually. But Calkins instead has challenged this, and he's raised it to the Supreme Court, and is seeking a really early summary judgment. And there's a concern that he could topple the whole thing.
Yeah, what could this do for the work that has been done by Thomas DeVore and you guys, the plaintiffs on his lawsuit? How could this potentially result in gun owners in Illinois coming away with still having their gun rights violated, their constitutional rights violated? How could this affect DeVore's suit?
Yeah, an adverse ruling from the Illinois Supreme Court probably would undo the temporary restraining orders that have been entered in these cases, and just would set aside the whole positive momentum that's been growing on these cases. Tom filed these cases in mid-January. Within several days, he had a temporary restraining order entered, and he's been building momentum ever since. He's been able to obtain similar temporary restraining orders in 2 other cases, and then Representative Calkins, of course, also obtained a temporary restraining order in his case. So, as this continues to sort of grow legs, it becomes perhaps more difficult to undo. But running to the Supreme Court right now and getting an adverse ruling could upset the apple cart on the whole thing.
Well, we're certainly going to be praying for justice to be done in Illinois, that the people there have their rights restored. We pray these attempts to stifle this suit are unsuccessful. Scott Kaspar, thank you so much for being on the show, explaining all of this for our audience. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.